There are other people who are doing something way better than me. They're more modest than me. They're more humble than me. They have more beauty than I do, and they're covering it up better than I'm covering it up. It's a better way of manifesting. Oh wow, okay. So excessive hand kissing, when someone washes their hands, they're throwing away the water in which the hands were washed or something like that. Yeah, all of these things can be manifestations. So these are more common in some societies than others. This is a very good one. Very common. Not including people in your conversation. Another one. Not getting help from other people? Because you think they can't do it properly or something like that. Okay. All right. That would apply. Unless it's a specialized field. Right? So unless it's a specialized field. Yeah. Right. So so with the elders, for example, the elders, anyone who's entitled to respect, an elder person is entitled to respect. A scholar is entitled to respect. A president is entitled to, a leader is entitled to respect. But the moment that they feel themselves that they're entitled and they're not receiving it, and they say, why am I not receiving it? I should be entitled because of me. Not because of my position, but because of me as an individual. That's where we're on a red line. That's where we have a problem. So that's what they need to realize is, rather than feeling entitled, or rather than demanding that they get it, or something like that, it's simply teaching the principle, and if they don't get it, they leave it. That's it, because it's not about me. It's about the position or the status. That's something different. So if we can differentiate between the two, that's going to make it clear for everyone. Inshallah. They heard you say salam and they won't respond? I think, my experience is more rare. It's quite rare, but is it really common? SubhanAllah, we got problems in our communities. And got big problems. So literally you walk up to someone, brothers feeling this too? Sometimes or a lot? Sometimes. Sisters, I got a lot. Khair, man. May Allah help us. Something's going on here. Just to avoid the salam and there's some jealousy or something going on, right? So there's a level of arrogance definitely in that. What else? That's a common one. So someone else expects that you should be giving the salam first. Or they should be giving the salam first rather than you. Right? And that's a simple remedy. There are rules with regards to who's supposed to give salam first. Right? Which will, cover another class. But there are rules. Right? There are rules. So we should follow those rules. Yeah. So cultural arrogance. Right? Like how can you eat uncooked fish or something like that? If you go to the website islamtoday.net, Sheikh Salman Auda, one of the leading scholars in the world, he just wrote an article about this, culture and Islam. It's a really, really beautiful article. I would really recommend. islamtoday.net. His website's ranked like one of the top Islamic websites in the world on Alexa ranking. He's a very, very influential scholar. So being excessively proud about your own children to the extent that it becomes arrogance over somebody else, this is very common as well. It's not accepting advice from somebody else. This is a big, big problem with arrogance. Like we said, it leads people away from the truth. It led people away from even the prophets. Right? So these are all signs of arrogance. Yes, that's true. Yes, Sheikh Sha'arawi was one of those people. He was so popular in Egypt. He used to, drive around in a limousine and all that, but he would stop, buy some chemicals, stop at a little local masjid, he would go inside and he'd clean the bathroom. Go and stop at another masjid, bathroom. He says, just to keep myself, remind me where I really am. Great example. There's a story where I studied in Lucknow in India that during the British occupation, right before the British occupation, there was a group called the Nawabs, and the Nawabs are like almost like the king, the princes of that area. So there's a story, whether it's true or not, Allah knows best. So when the British came to take over India in that city, everyone in the city ran away when the British army came, except that one Nawab. He said, what happened to you? Why are you the only guy that stayed here? He said, because the guy who puts my shoes on, he ran away before he could put my shoes on. I couldn't go anywhere. So if it's true, it's really bad. If the person doesn't desire it, and the person is not demanding it, and the person is able to live without all of these things, then khair, it may not be something that is completely forbidden for him. Maybe you find a lot of times people are insisting on doing this to a certain scholar. And they're coming and they're saying, no, you have to do this, you have to do this. Like, for example, I'll give you a very good example. There's a sheikh that I met in England. And he drives an $80,000 Mercedes SUV. Okay? And you're looking, he's like an old guy. He's like 85 years old or something like that. And he came up to me and he was talking to me about something and he was explaining to me. He says, people still think that something is wrong with me because I'm driving such an expensive car in an area where it's not, most people are not driving this kind of car. So he says, what really happened, and I've been telling people. He says, one of my students came to me, one of the people who really likes me came to me, and he gave me the keys, he bought me this car, and he said, I want you to drive what I'm driving for my own family because of my love for you. And I don't want you to sell it. I don't want you to give it away in charity. My humble request for you is to please make me happy by driving this thing. This is literally what happened to him. So if it's something like this, and if that's really the case, if somebody comes and, gives you like a, whatever, McLaren or something like that, and says, I want you to drive this to feel, so I feel happy or something like that, then it's a choice that they make. Either you're going to be upset. Some people are like that in their culture, They'll come and they'll demand that you do something, and they're sincere about it. So if it's something like that, we shouldn't judge the individual person. If it's in their heart, then we should be careful. As a culture, we should also be careful. So when someone's giving you salam, right? And you're giving somebody salam and they're not responding, you should try to make an excuse. Maybe they didn't hear you, right? Maybe they didn't. Let's come up with 5 quick excuses you could really make legitimately for them. One is they didn't hear you. What else? They thought you were talking to somebody else. What else? They were distracted by somebody else. They said it back, but you didn't hear them. Okay. Alhamdulillah. That's a rare example, but yes, I guess that could happen as well. And what else? One more? Maybe they're new. Okay, maybe they're a new Muslim. They don't know how to respond. Yeah. Okay. So these are all excuses that you can make for them. Maybe they're stressed out. They're having a bad day. When you're really stressed out, you're so preoccupied in your mind, you can't hear anything else what's going on. So these are all excuses, yeah. All right, so let's move on. The remedy for arrogance. Okay, so there are 2 things. First, there's a remedy for uprooting the arrogance from your heart. And this is, of course, the most important remedy. And the second remedy is for preventing it from manifesting itself when you actually have it in your heart. So the first one is to know yourself. The more you know yourself, the less arrogant you're likely to become. When I say know yourself meaning know where you came from. Like that one scholar said to the other guy, remember what you were? You were just simply a little piece of, semen, fluid. That's what you were existing in before. So what are you so proud of? Know yourself in terms of how many people are there on the earth? 6.8, 6.9 billion people. China and India are raising the statistic up there, So almost 7 billion people on earth. Right? So where are you in terms, are you the best out of all of them in all things? Are you really the best out of all of them in one thing, or in 2 things, or in 3 things? So if you know yourself, and then you zoom out even more and you look at how many solar systems, we have a solar system, how many galaxies exist in our Milky Way, how many universes, how many systems are out there. So many, millions. So if you actually analyze yourself, you in the vast space that you really, really live in are like nothing. You're like a little grain of sand. You don't actually, what are you in that sense? In that sense, you're a little tiny part of this universe. To what extent are you? If you were to put a percentage of what we know about the universe and where you actually are from a physical standpoint, what percentage of the universe do you comprise of? Not even a fraction of a fraction. You probably, the calculator wouldn't even be able to calculate how small you actually are. But when you're arrogant, you start thinking that you are the world. Everything revolves around you. You're the center of the earth, or you're the center of the universe. Everything should be around you. So the more you know yourself, the more you remember who you really are relative to everything else in existence. And most importantly, relative to Allah. That's when you focus yourself. That's when you come back and you say, you know what? What do I think I am? Who do I think I am? I'm not anything special. So why am I being arrogant over other people? For nothing. Why am I focusing on how great I am when I could have equally focused on how insignificant I am? You could spend hours and hours thinking on how insignificant you are, but instead you decided to spend hours and hours focusing on how great you are. This is the problem with arrogance. Right? You can write a whole book about the level of your insignificance, but an arrogant person can write a book about how great they really are. The second thing is to know Allah. When you know Allah, the more you know Allah, the less likely you are to become arrogant. Because when you realize Allah's true status above you, and you realize your true status with relation to Allah, that you're a servant, that you're a slave, that you're someone you're a creation, you're contingent, your existence is contingent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating you in the first place. Your existence is contingent upon Allah allowing you to survive and allowing you to live. And He could take your life at any moment. He could make you into nothing at any moment. Then what is there to be arrogant about? What is there to elevate yourself over other people about? So once you know these things, and you realize that you're a servant, then you start acting as a servant. And the more that you act like a servant in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more the arrogance is going to go away from you. The more it's going to go away from your heart, and it's going to be uprooted, and it's going to be removed. The second is preventing symptoms. So preventing the symptoms of arrogance that are already there, cutting those branches like we were talking about from the root, is to ask yourself that, number one, did I really earn those things? Right? All those things that I have, to what extent do I really possess them? To what extent did I earn them? To what extent do I own them? To what extent can I guarantee that they're going to remain? So you have beauty, you have power, you have knowledge, you learn some stuff. Thinking that, how do you know that Allah cannot make all the other people around you greater than you in that one attribute? And how do you know that attribute cannot be taken away from you? And all of a sudden it's gone. And now you don't even have the power or the authority to make sure and ensure that that attribute is going to stay. So what are you being arrogant about? So what is there to actually start going and, arrogating yourself over other people? So this is something to prevent the symptoms, prevent inside. Preventing the symptoms also is when you know the harms of arrogance, you know the signs of arrogance, and you see that it starts manifesting in yourself, you immediately stop yourself and you remember the day of judgment. You remember that Allah is going to judge you and He's going to hold you accountable for every deed that you've done against somebody else. So every time you didn't respond to a salam if you didn't. Every time you didn't want to sit next to another person. Every time you made fun of another person because you thought you're better than them. Allah is going to hold you accountable for those things. So, is that it? Yes, that's it. I have on this topic, inshallah ta'ala, and we can move on to some other topics that I have prepared here, unless there's questions. See, okay, you mean like on a resume and stuff? Yeah, putting yourself up on a resume or something, giving your own statistics out there, if you understand that it's for the intention of letting the employer know your skills, then it's like Prophet Yusuf asking for a position in Egypt, where he explained himself and says, I am knowledgeable and I am, responsible, so put me in charge. That's from that perspective. Well, if you think that you're actually better than everyone else who's putting their resume forward, when you're writing your resume, then you have arrogance. But writing it on the resume just to explain to the employer what skills you have, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as it's not in your heart, that you're the greatest. You ask Allah to protect you. You seek refuge in Allah from kibr. Kibr from arrogance. Any one of these du'as can apply. There are several du'as for kibr. Any one of these can apply, inshallah. People can do something that is a humble action in order to be seen so that people think that they're humble. And this is a very dangerous thing, especially for people who are trying to be religious. People who are trying to be righteous. They'll do something that's humbling. So they go, I'm gonna eat on the floor because I'm, humility. But in reality, you are doing that to show that you're humble, and therefore you're not really humble, right? And people can do this. Like for example, like the brother was mentioning, he's gone now. Brother was mentioning that people wearing hijab, for example, out of arrogance. So people can do other righteous deeds, like when we talked about the pants, for example. Sometimes people will, not drag their pants, but they'll become arrogant about the type of clothes that they're wearing. right? Or they become arrogant about the way that they're eating their food. Or they become arrogant about some other good deed. This can also lead to several problems. That's why when you're trying to judge arrogance, the best person to judge arrogance is you judge yourself. You make judgment on yourself. You don't judge somebody else. All right? Because you say, well, they look like they're being arrogant by doing such and such deed. Now, if they're doing a deed of humility and they're being arrogant about it, usually it's not something that you can judge, because you can't judge their intention anymore, because the deed looks like it's a deed of humility. So you can't go and make a judgment about them. So you have to be very careful, but you can make a judgment about yourself. That you can do. That you should do. Yeah, if it's part of the culture to kiss the hand of elders or something like that, that's different. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The thing is that it's those people who feel that they should have some special privilege, right, over other people. That's when it becomes arrogance. Okay. So the question is it only a sin if it's acted on? If the arrogance is acted upon? So based upon what we studied today, what's the answer to that? It's only a sin if it's acted upon? How do we explain the hadith then that says anyone who has a mustard seed of arrogance will not enter to paradise? Is the hadith saying that it has to be acted upon? Does it imply that it has to be acted upon? Could it imply that? Whoever took the hadith class from the last one, did we take every hadith literally? No. So could it imply that? Potentially. It could potentially imply that. But does it imply that? It's difficult to control yourself. Okay? That's one side. So you didn't manifest it. So if you keep thinking about it, right? So generally when somebody's arrogant, what are they thinking about? Very good. Very good connection. So what he's saying is that you can manifest arrogance internally as well as externally. So there's a difference, building on what Ahmed was saying, there's a difference between having the thought and there's a difference between manifesting it. And you can actually manifest it internally in your own mind, in your own heart. And that's different from simply the thought coming up in your mind. So there's two different things. And the example that he gave was the hadith about the first three people that are going to be judged on the Day of Judgment are those who were doing deeds with insincerity, right? But with the show of hypocrisy. So the deed that they did was wrong with that. But it was that hypocrisy that was there, right? So from that, we actually understand that there is a level, even if you do not manifest this arrogance in front of other people or you don't manifest it on your limbs, if you manifest it in your heart, there's two levels. Once it comes out to that level, you're also going to be held accountable for it. It's something that actually I asked one of my teachers as well, the same question, and he gave, same response actually. And it's very, very important scholar in the world. Yeah. Striving to be better in recitation or striving to win a competition or something. That's something else. That's something else. But when you think that you're better than somebody else and you focus on that, on how great you are and how low the other person is, and you're focusing on that thought, that's when you have arrogance. That can be avoided simply by focusing on something else or not focusing on your greatness over somebody else. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay if you say mashallah. Yeah. And giving feedback and saying, alhamdulillah, you have a very nice recitation or something like that, that's allowed. But remember when we talked about the harms of praise, we talked about praise, right? So when we talked about praise and flattery, what did the Prophet ﷺ say about praise? Does anyone remember? Slaughtering. You're slaughtering your brother when you praise them, right? Because of the potential that they can become arrogant. That's the whole point. So you have to be very careful about that. Assalamu alaikum.